Alright, this is Spectator Spider-Man Annual 9, and it is SeaWorld Attacks again. This continues on the story from the Punisher one about the drug clinic that is transforming persons into serpents. Punisher and Moonman are gone from the plot, and instead we have Spider-Man as well as Coke and Pepsi. I didn't think I have mentioned before that I really didn't like Coke and Pepsi. I also have to be careful because this first page here is loose. What I will say is that these three parts of SeaWorld Attacks are the most concise and cleanly plotted. That's not to say that there isn't problems in spades, but the side plot about this rehab / homeless shelter, it is a plot line that is set up, half explored, and then resolved. The bad guys in SeaWorld Attacks have a very complicated plan, so for the sake of brevity, I'll just talk about this part of it, and then later the other element that comes into play in this issue. With this rehab centre, they are injecting people with what they claim is a magic cure to chemical dependency, but it is really the serpent syrup from some issues of Captain America. It transforms them into serpent men because they want to create a cult of worshippers for the evil serpent god's arrival on Earth. That is the end goal of the crossover, bringing an evil snake god to Earth. I didn't like Coke and Pepsi, but I think their inclusion in this story is sensible. They have a backstory that involves them. I can't remember if they were druggies or if they were just friends with some. And now that they have superpowers, Coke, he has a shadow cloak, and it needs to feed on things. So there is that element of addiction too. But someone is watching them from the shadows. The clone Sajas come early. We have got a mysterious figure perving on this scene. This turns out to be the obviously not dead Seaman, who supposedly died at the start of this crossover. So Spider-Man and Coke and Pepsi, they are looking into this rehab thing, and I do like that this story beat from the crossover is strictly given to the street level heroes. Our other crossover bit, and this is the more main plot stuff for that, we have our bad guy Gore, and he has decided Pepsi from Coke and Pepsi, she should be used as a bride for the serpent god. They need 7 brides because the serpent god has 7 heads. So it is like there is a bride for each head. You say, fuck, this crossover is so long-winded. You see, to summon the serpent god to Earth, you need a cult of serpent people. You need a gigantic serpent art. You need a massive blood sacrifice of thousands. and you need 7 devout brides. It is okay if you can only get 6 though, because that is all the crossover managers. But I want it known that I really despise Cork. I think Cork, he is a horrible character, insanely unlikable. I usually forget just how unlikable he is until he shows up in a comic. If Warner Brothers have problems with an angry black man, giving Anthem any Coke and Pepsi comics. Cork is one of the angriest black men ever. He's like one of the most ugly people around. So then one of the bad guys, Tyrannomon, he catches Pepsi. And when I did Subterraneous Wars, I totally forgot. On top of Gore's army, they also reused Tyrannomon from this crossover in that. One of the major strengths and things I like the most about SeaWorld Attacks is the continuity. Not the internal continuity, that is quite bad. But the plot itself is building on and spinning from so much different continuity. Anything with a serpent in it or a serpent themed thing. It's building this enormous mythology around the serpent god and serpent imagery. We have stuff from Captain America, we have Conan the Barber stuff, and here with Spider-Man, we directly reference a Defender story, the Jim Tomatoes one, where him and Slayer Man fought a bunch of serpent men. This is what I like. I think on paper, even the plot of this crossover, it is good. It just wasn't executed or even communicated well. We start getting stuff on Tyrannomon, and he doesn't end up having much of a role in the wider crossover. Him and Madam Hydra, who I think we are done with now, sadly, they set up this little scam with all these clinics, and then they just disappear from the story when that part is over and done with. We set up this interesting thing with no payoff, where Tyrannomon has his own motives and agenda. He isn't interested in Gore's plan or the Serpent God. He is going to stab them in the back and do his own thing when the time is right. And we never get to see that. This never comes to anything. And that would have been good to see, and again add some ongoing narrative to the whole crossover. So now we see the Serpent Men, they attack Cork, and we also have a funny amount of pages of Spider-Man crawling around a building, thinking to himself over and over again about how he is following this one guy. During the fighting, Cork, he is suddenly saved by someone, and that someone is the mysterious person from before, who is Seaman in armour. So Spider-Man he finally learns what's going on after following a man around for most of this comic. Spider-Man, he gets captured by Tyrannomon and the Serpent Men, and then he gets injected with the serpent syrup, and it is a cliffhanger to be directly continued on in the Daredevil issue, but without Coke and Pepsi. Then we have backup stories, and I usually didn't bother gunning our backup stories since they are a waste of time. They are disposable inventory stories, and they make the video longer. But this one, it is Donald Glover, and I would like the backup stories if they tied in with the crossover. I didn't care for Donald Glover. I'm not Todd McFarlane after all. For some reason, Todd McFarlane really loved this character. I would be fine with seeing this bit player reacting to the events of the main plot. Maybe he fights serpent people instead of a generic nobody baddie who never appears again. Or maybe he knows someone who has gone to that rehab. I don't know, I am not a comic book writer. But I would be more inclined to read these if they tied in like that. One of the Avengers annuals actually does that this year. The backup stories are related to the crossover. I like that. And stuff like this, well, it doesn't need to be integral or super relevant. Just like the equivalent of a tie-in issue story with Donald Glover. This one, it's not great. I didn't... Actually, maybe it's even quite bad. I don't know. It's not an easy one to assess. Coke is horrible. I hate him. He is... A lot of this is about him. Spider-Man follows a man around. Yeah, you know what? This is pretty weak. I guess this comic isn't bad, but I would never describe it as good. That is the most I can say about it. I'll rate it a 7 thumbs up. And say hello to your mum.